Welcome to Azure Simplified. In this module, we will get to know how to design authentication and authorization solutions, table of contents, design for identity and access management, understanding Microsoft Entra ID, getting to know Microsoft Entra B2B, design for Microsoft AD B2B, using service principles for applications, using identity protection, how to use access reviews, assigning and using managed identities, proper use of conditional access, design for Azure Key Vaults. To implement authentication and authorization, Azure architects design identity and access management solutions. These solutions must work for all users, applications, and devices. Here we can see the complete process of how authenticating, authorizing, and accessing resources works. The user, resource owner, initiates an authentication request with the identity provider, authorization server from the client application. If the credentials are valid, the identity provider, authorization server first sends an ID token containing information about the user back to the client application. The identity provider, authorization server also obtains end-user consent and grants the client application authorization to access the protected resource. Authorization is provided in an access token, which is also sent back to the client application. The access token is attached to subsequent requests made to the protected resource server from the client application. The identity provider, authorization server validates the access token. If successful, the request for protected resources is granted, and a response is sent back to the client application. Things to know about ING. As you look at your authentication and authorization options for Tailwind traders, consider these characteristics of a strong ING solution: unified identity management. Manage all your identities and access to all your applications in a central location, whether they're in the cloud or on premises, to improve visibility and control. Seamless user experience. Provide an easy, fast sign-in experience to keep your users productive, reduce time spent managing passwords, and increase end-user productivity. Secure adaptive access. Protect access to resources and data by using strong authentication and risk-based adaptive access policies without compromising the user experience. Simplified identity governance. Control access to applications and data for all users and admins. Automated identity governance ensures only authorized users have access. Things to consider when using ING. Your first step is to determine the ideal ING solution for Tailwind traders. The following option lists 3 basic choices. We'll look closely at these options in the next units. Consider using Microsoft Entra ID. Develop with Microsoft Entra ID for a solution that combines core directory services, application access management, and identity protection. Consider your business-to-business (B2B) requirements. Support collaboration for guest users and external business partners of Tailwind traders, such as suppliers and vendors. Consider your business-to-customer scenarios. Control how Tailwind traders' customers sign up, sign in, and manage their profiles when they use your apps. Microsoft Entra ID is the Azure solution for identity and access management. Microsoft Entra ID is a multi-tenant, cloud-based directory and identity management service. It combines core directory services, application access management, and identity protection into a single solution. Microsoft Entra ID can be used in cloud or hybrid environments. Things to consider when using Microsoft Entra Identity Management. Centralized identity management. All the user data which is stored in on-premises data center will always sync up with the cloud Entra ID using Microsoft Entra Connect. This will help to centralize identity management from one location. Single Microsoft Entra instance. Use once Entra instance throughout the organization. This will help to increase clarity and reduce security risks from human errors and configuration complexity. Limit account synchronization. Don't synchronize accounts to Active Directory that have high privileges in your existing Microsoft Entra instance. Password hash synchronization. Password hash synchronization helps by reducing the number of passwords your users need to maintain to just one. Single sign-on, SSO. Enable SSO to reduce the need for multiple passwords. Multiple passwords increase the likelihood of users reusing passwords or using weak passwords. Managing separate identities. Calculate the overhead of not integrating the Tailwind traders on-premises identity with their cloud identity. Separate identities can result in extra account management. This overhead increases the likelihood of mistakes and security breaches. Every organization needs to work with external users. Microsoft Entra Business to Business (B2B) is a feature of Microsoft Entra ID that enables you to securely collaborate with external partners. Your partner users are invited as guest users. You remain in control of what they have access to, and for how long. Tailwind Traders uses a supplier portal. Tailwind Traders wants to give global tech supplies access to the portal. The IT admin sends an invitation via Microsoft Entra B2B to the supplier's employee, Smith at globaltech.com. External user Jane accepts the invitation. She signs in using her GlobalTech corporate credentials. She does not need a Tailwind Traders account. Secure and controlled access. Smith now has limited access to the supplier portal without accessing Tailwind Traders' internal network. Her permissions are managed via Microsoft Entra Conditional Access, enforcing multi-factor authentication, MFA, access only from trusted devices, locations. Automatic deprovisioning. If Smith leaves GlobalTech, Tailwind Traders can remove her access instantly via Microsoft Entra B2B. Things to consider when using Microsoft Entra B2B. Consider designating an app owner to manage guest users. Microsoft recommended delegate guest user access to Tailwind Traders app owners because the owners know best who should be given access to their apps. Conditional access policies. Define policies to grant or deny access based on specific conditions. Enforce restrictions like device type, e.g., Android, Windows, or location. Multi-factor authentication, MFA. Set conditional access policies to require an MFA process before the user can access Tailwind Traders apps. This action ensures that all users who access an app must pass an extra authentication challenge before accessing the app. Integration with identity providers. Allow external users to sign in using existing accounts, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, etc. Enable federation with enterprise identity providers. Self-service sign-up. Self-service sign-up allows external users, B2B guests, partners, or customers, to register themselves. They can sign up using social accounts, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. Enterprise identity providers, Microsoft, Azure AD. Azure Active Directory B2C, Azure AD B2C, is a customer identity and access management, CIAM, solution that allows businesses to provide secure and customizable authentication for their customers, consumers, or external users. Unlike Microsoft Entra ID, formerly Azure AD, which is meant for corporate users and business-to-business, B2B, collaboration, Azure AD B2C is specifically designed for customer-facing applications. The Microsoft Entra tenant represents your organization. The Azure AD B2C tenant represents the identities for your customer apps. Things to know about Azure AD B2C. Azure AD B2C provides secure authentication for your customers by using their preferred identity providers. You can capture sign-in, preference, and conversion data for your customers. Azure AD B2C stores custom attributes about customers so you can use the information in your apps. You can use branded registration and custom UI sign-in experiences. Key considerations for using Azure AD B2C. Reusable user flows. Azure AD B2C comes with pre-configured policies called user flows. You can reuse the same user flows across different apps. Reusing user flows creates a consistent user journey across all apps. Social identity sign-in. Consider allowing users to sign in with their social identities. Support identity providers to enable Tailwind Traders users to sign in with their existing social or enterprise accounts. Social providers include Amazon, Microsoft Entra ID, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and Microsoft accounts. Customizable user interface. Consider a customizable user interface to support branding. Customize the pages in your Tailwind Traders user flow. Write your own HTML and CSS or use built-in templates called page layout templates. Integration with external user stores. Azure AD B2C provides a directory that can hold 100 custom attributes per user. However, integration with external systems is also an option. You can use Azure AD B2C for authentication, but delegate to an external customer relationship management, CRM, or customer loyalty database as the source of truth for customer data. Third-party identity verification. Use Azure AD B2C to facilitate identity verification and proofing for Tailwind Traders by collecting user data. Pass the data to a third-party system to perform validation, trust scoring, and approval for user account creation. Below table explains comparison of B2B and B2C identity solutions. Here in the B2B scenario, the focus is on partners, suppliers and vendors. In the case of B2C scenario, the focus is on customers. Conditional access is a tool that Microsoft Entra ID uses to allow, or deny, access to resources. When a user signs in, conditional access examines who the user is, where the user is, and from what device the user is requesting access. Based on these signals, conditional access can allow access, enforce multi-factor authentication, MFA, or deny access. If a user is from a known location, you might not require extra authentication. For users from unknown or unexpected locations, you can challenge them to supply the second authentication factor. Consider preventing access from specific geographic areas. Exclude geographic areas that you don't expect Tailwind traders to interact with. Use Microsoft Entra ID to create named locations for the geographic areas. Create a policy for all apps to block sign-in attempts from the named locations. Be sure to exempt your admins from this policy. Allow access only from managed devices. Tailwind traders lets users access cloud resources from many devices to boost productivity. To protect the environment, limit access for devices with unknown security levels. Ensure users access resources only from devices that meet Tailwind traders' security and compliance standards. Consider access only from approved client apps. Protect Tailwind traders' corporate data by enabling access to services through approved client apps only. Consider using policies to handle compromised accounts. Enable one or more default policies to handle compromised accounts. Require all users to register for MFA. Require a password change for users who are high risk. Require MFA for users with medium or high sign-in risk. Consider blocking access. Block access to override all other assignments for a user. Blocking can be helpful when you're migrating an app to Microsoft Entra ID, but you aren't ready for anyone to sign in yet. You can also block certain network locations from accessing your cloud apps, or block apps that use legacy authentication from accessing your tenant resources. Consider blocking legacy authentication protocols. Attackers exploit weaknesses in older protocols every day, particularly for password spray attacks. Configure conditional access to block legacy protocols from accessing Tailwind traders' apps. Consider running report-only mode. Run report-only mode to predict the number and names of Tailwind traders users who are affected with common deployment initiatives. Use report-only mode to test blocking legacy authentication, requiring MFA, and implementing sign-in risk policies. Consider using the What If tool. Use the What If tool to test your proposed conditional access policies before you implement them. Identity protection is a tool that allows organizations to accomplish 3 key tasks: automate the detection and remediation of identity-based risks. Investigate risks by using data in the Azure portal. Export risk detection data to other tools. Things to know about identity protection. Identity protection provides risk policy detection that includes any identified suspicious actions related to user accounts in the directory. 2 risk policies are evaluated: user risk and sign-in risk. User risk detection includes leaked credentials. Microsoft checks for leaked credentials from the dark web, paste sites, or other sources. These leaked credentials are checked against Microsoft Entra users' current valid credentials for valid matches. Microsoft Entra Threat Intelligence. This risk detection type indicates user activity that's unusual for the given user or is consistent with known attack patterns. Sign-in risk detection includes anonymous IP address, a sign-in attempt from an anonymous IP address like a Tor browser or an anonymized VPN. Atypical travel, 2 sign-ins from the same user that originate from a geographically distant location. Given past behavior, at least one of the locations might also be atypical for the user. Consider high threshold for user risk policy. Microsoft recommended set the risk policy level for your Tailwind traders users to high. A high setting can detect for leaked credentials and unusual activity for a user, and check for known attack patterns. By setting the policy threshold to high, you can spread a wide net to prevent attacks that target user credentials. Consider medium and above threshold for sign-in risk policy. Microsoft recommended configure the risk policy level for sign-in attempts to Tailwind traders apps to medium and above. This setting supports the identity protection self-remediation options. Self-remediation, like password changes and MFA, have less impact than blocking users. Consider investigating risks in the Azure portal. Investigate Tailwind traders' risk events in the Azure portal and identify any weak areas in your security implementation. Download the risk events in CSV format and view the output in the security section of Microsoft Entra ID. Use the Microsoft Graph API integrations to aggregate your data with other sources. Consider exporting your risk detection data. Export the risk detection data for Tailwind traders by using the Microsoft Sentinel Data Connector for identity protection. When a user or application requests access to a resource, the user or app uses a security principal. The security principal defines the access policy and permissions for the user principal, or app service principal. The principal supports core features like authentication, authorization during resource access. This diagram represents a multi-tenant application setup in Microsoft Azure using service principals. It shows how an application registered in tenant A can be granted access to resources in tenant B by creating a service principal in that tenant. There are 3 types of service principals in Azure: application, managed identity, and legacy. Application. a local instance of a global app object within a tenant, defining permissions and access. Example, Dropbox registers an app in its own Azure AD tenant, instances in Azure tenant. Managed identity, a credential-free identity for secure authentication to Microsoft Entra protected resources. Example, a company runs an Azure virtual machine, VM, that needs to query an Azure SQL database. Legacy, an older service principal without an associated app registration, created before modern app registration methods. Example, a company has a custom internal HR portal that was created in 2010. Things to know about application objects and service principals. An app can have at most one app object, which is registered in a home directory. An app can have one or more service principal objects that represent instances of the app in every directory in which it acts. An app object has a 1:1 relationship with the software app, and a 1-to-many relationship with its service principal object. A service principal must be created in each tenant where the app is used. The service principal establishes an identity for sign-in and access to tenant resources. A single tenant app has only one service principal, in its home tenant, created and consented for use during app registration. A multi-tenant app also has a service principal created in each tenant where the principal is used. Azure Managed Identity, a free feature of Microsoft Entra ID, automatically creates an identity for apps to securely access Azure services. Apps can use managed identities to securely connect to services like Azure Key Vault, for storing secrets, or Azure Storage. There are two types of managed identities. System assigned. This identity is created when a system assigned identity is enabled on a resource. System assigned identity is tied to the resource for which it is created. It gets deleted once the resource is deleted. This identity is managed automatically by Azure. User assigned. This identity is created as a separate Azure resource and AMP. It exists independently. This identity is managed manually and has to be attached to different resources and also has to be manually detached. The benefit of the user assigned managed identity is it's reusable. Azure Key Vault provides a secure, centralized solution for managing secrets, encryption keys, and certificates, reducing security risks and accidental exposure. Key capabilities. Secrets management, securely store API keys, passwords, and tokens. Key management, create, manage, and protect encryption keys. Certificate management, simplify deployment of TLS, SSL certificates. Key Vault security best practices. Use separate key vaults, define security boundaries by keeping secrets isolated per application to minimize risk. Restrict access, allow only authorized apps and users. Set access policies for each vault. Follow least privilege access. Enable firewall and AMP, network controls. Enable data protection, prevent data loss with soft delete, recover accidentally deleted secrets, like a recycle bin. Purge protection, prevent malicious deletions with a time-locked recovery period. Thank you for watching. Please share and subscribe and comment your feedback.